just got up. It seems like it's the middle of the night, but I checked my phone and it's 6 something, 6:30, something like that. And I've just had something going through my mind, some inspiration to make a movie for you about a very old book, very rare, and I think I probably only have the only copy of this particular translation. This is the only one I have, and I read it many, many years ago, and it's a very good book about the original science of morality that was understood between the time of Adam and before the Hebrews' religion evolved. There was a religion based on the story of Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve were, if you like, it was like a parable and a teaching based around the story of the garden, and just a little bit of this ended up in the Old Testament Bible, just a little bit. And so there is a full story, and the little bit that ended up in the Bible sort of lost the meaning of the original story. It has it, but only in a great overview, so the detail is gone really, and the important parts are gone. And so what I thought was, I did come across this book in my files yesterday, and I was thinking about it in the night, and it came to me that I should perhaps read this book, it's only a short book, and present it on YouTube. And the reason for this is because we're also entering a very interesting time now. In the night, yesterday was the 29th of December, and 2022. And at this time, it's a special time, astrologically it's a special time, where we go back to over the past and make sure that we got it right, everything right. So we look at ourselves, looking at the conclusions and ideas that we have about the world and where it's going and where it's come from and all that. We're looking at all that stuff to make sure it's right. Now, the interesting thing about today is that all the planets are in the sky. So they're all on one side of the Earth, on the sunny side of the Earth, if you like, and nothing is hidden below the Earth. All the planets are together in the sky. And this means, the symbolism of this is that all the cards are now on the table. That's what it means. And we're about to enter a very interesting period where Saturn goes retrograde into Aquarius. And this happens on the 17th of January. So between now and the 17th of January, we're going to be going over everything that's going on in the world and finding out what is right, okay? And so that's just like an overview of where we are in time. And the other thing that's been happening, I've been playing this song, trying to play this song. I don't know the song, I've just been like playing a few lines of it. And we're going to play the song to you now, I think. I hope my guitar's in tune. Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Check ignition and put your headlights on. Ground control to Major Tom. Headlights on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. Well, that's interesting. You see, I said check ignition twice, and it doesn't go like that in the song, I know that. So, it's obviously a sign to say, well, two candles here, aren't there? Check ignition. And one of the things with Adam and Eve was that they lost their bright nature. Their candles stopped burning. And so, check ignition twice, check your own ignition, check your lady's ignition. Are you all firing all 6 cylinders, or all whatever cylinders, or has a few of your cylinders gone out? Now, that's where the next phrase come in. And may God's love be with you. What does that mean? What's God's love, you know? God's love. Well, it explains that in the book of Adam and Eve. And it's become something like a bit hairy-fairy, God's love. What the hell is that? Okay, so I hope the book of Adam and Eve will give you a good understanding of what God's love is, when you got it, when you ain't got it, and what you can do to get it back. Okay, here we go, enjoy. The book is called The Cave of Treasures, and it's by or from Ephraim the Syrian, and it must date back to very, very early, between the time of Adam and the Hebrew religion, really. And the Hebrew religion was already in existence, and perhaps Ephraim the Syrian was part of that religion, I'm not sure. Yet the book has been carried from ancient times into the present, with where things were not fully understood, they were left alone, and where additional information was possible to add, I suppose, things have been, extra words have been added into of elaboration, I don't know. But it's what comes to us today, and what comes to us today is what we're meant to have today, in this day and age, for the children of the future. Okay, let's start. The creation, the first day. In the beginning, on the first day, God created the heavens and the earth, and the waters, and the air, and the fire, and the hosts which are invisible. Okay, the hosts which are visible, that's the angels, archangels, all this stuff. It's going to tell you about that now. These are the angels, archangels, thrones, lords, principalities, powers, cherubim and seraphim, and all the ranks and companies of spiritual beings. Now, if you want to know what these things are, what they mean, this is the only book that tells you that. And so I'm not going to read through it all. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll through it here. And you can read all this stuff if you like, and it will define and give you everything that their science knew about this in those days, because they had a full science of earth and heaven and all this stuff which we have lost. And it's important to understand that this was the highest science that they had back then. Going into the full detail, what the angels and archangels are. Now this part, I'll read this bit here. So principalities are a motion which rules the elements. The archangels are a swift operative motion which governs every living creature except man. So this is what moves, governs all the animals and everything, the winds and everything, that except man. And the angels are a motion which has spiritual knowledge of everything which is in heaven or on earth. So this is where our wisdom comes from. And the guardian angel of every man belongs to this last class. Guardian angel of every man belongs to the class of the angels which have spiritual knowledge of everything which is in heaven or on earth. The number of each class of angel is equal to the number of all mankind from Adam to the resurrection. That's interesting. The heaven in which the angels live is above the waters, which are above the firmament, and they minister to their God there, being invisible to bodily eyes. So I was talking about this place which is another dimension, if you like, which is not visible to us, yet we're aware of it through our interior senses. The angels are not existent beings. They were created just like we were created. On the other hand, darkness is a self-existent nature or substance. The second day, the creation. Okay, so this is all about separation of the waters and... Okay, I think we need to do this. Let's go into this. Okay, I'll do the whole thing. It says, on the second day God made the lower heaven, the firmament. That is to say, what is solid and fixed. I think that's supposed to be solid and fixed. This he did that he might make known that the lower heaven does not possess the nature of the heavens which are above it. For this lower heaven is of a denser substance, that men might know what it is to be separated from God. And so there's a denser substance that is a place that man can be and feel separated from God. And on the second day, God made a separation between the waters and the waters. That is to say, between the waters which were above and the waters which were below. And the ascent of these waters which were above heaven took place on the second day. The heaven below can be likened to a veil of dark cloud or impenetrable mist as it is experienced by the mind of man. Okay, so the mind of man can be clear in the upper heaven, or it can experience a dark veil or cloud when it's confined to its own mind. The creation of the firmament enabled God to allot a dwelling place to the angels, where also the souls of the righteous could be received upon their resurrection. Okay, so upon the resurrection of the souls, they go into the firmament. Right, the next three they create. And on the third, fourth and fifth day God created all that was within divine nature, that man might know that all was perfect before he came. And thus it was that the Garden of Eden, the earthly paradise, was born. Okay, so everything, it's a summary and overview, if you like, of the creation as a parable, as people could understand it, and making the main parts of it. The reader is now aware of the main parts and has some concept of a place where man can be put into a darker nature and a place of bright nature, and the existence of the angels. Now, the creation, the sixth day, the formation of Adam and Eve. And on the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, God formed Adam out of the dust and Eve from his rib. And on the seventh day God rested from his labours, and it is called Sabbath. And in all Bibles, days of God are thousands of years. So these days are thousands of years. That's what a day means in the Bible, biblical terms. Now the formation of Adam took place in this wise. On the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day, when quietness was reigning over all the ranks of the angels, and the hosts of heaven, God said, Come ye, let us make man in our image, and according to our likeness. And when the angels heard this utterance, they fell into a state of fear and trembling, as they said to one another, A mighty miracle will be made manifest to us this day, the likeness of God, our Maker. Okay, so man is in the likeness of God, our Maker. They're going to see what God looks like. And so this is very important, that the relationship between God and man is personal. And they saw the right hand of God opened out flat and stretched out over the whole world, and all creatures were collected in the palm of his right hand. And they saw that he took from the whole mass of the earth one grain of dust, and from the whole nature of water one drop of water, and from all the air which is above one puff of wind, and from the whole nature of fire a little of its heat and warmth, the fire being life. And the angel saw that when these four feeble materials were placed in the palm of his right hand, that is to say, cold and heat and dryness and moisture, God formed Adam. God formed Adam with his holy hands in his own image and likeness. And when the angels saw Adam's glorious appearance, they were greatly moved by the beauty thereof. For they saw the image of his face burning with the glorious splendour like the orb of the sun, and the light of his eyes were like the light of the sun, and the image of his body was like unto sparkling of crystal. And when he rose at full length and stood upright in the centre of the earth, he planted his 2 feet on the spot whereupon was set up the cross of our Redeemer, for Adam was created in Jerusalem, my holy city. There he was arrayed in the apparel of sovereignty, and there was the crown of glory set upon his head. There was he made king and priest and prophet. There did God make him to sit upon his honourable throne, and there did God make him responsible for the welfare of all creatures, great and small, and every little piece of paradise. Now, this is very interesting because it's not talking about this particular Adam, it's talking about all men. Adam, the first man, is in all of us, and we all are what he's talking about. And all the wild beasts and all the cattle and the feathered fowl were gathered together, and they passed before Adam, and not one single one of them feared him or he them. And the angels and the hosts of heaven heard the voice of God saying unto him, Adam, behold, I have made thee king and priest and prophet and lord and head and governor of everything which hath been made and created. And they shall be your responsibility forever. I will hold you accountable for every little hair on the smallest single head. And I have given unto thee power over everything which I have created, to be its helpmate in times of need. And when the angels heard this speech, they all bowed the knee and worshipped him. Bar Hebraeus says that Adam was created on Friday of the first week of Nisan, April, the first month of the first year of the world, 1 AD. The Egyptian and Ethiopian churches have a tradition that the angels were not all created at the same time. The great archangel Michael, who is called the Angel of the Face, and all his rank of angels were created in the first hour of Friday, the priests in the second, the thrones in the third, the dominions or sultans in the fourth, the lords in the fifth, the powers in the sixth, the tens of thousands in the seventh, the governors in the eighth, the masters in the ninth. After the governors, the rank of angels governed by Satan were created, and then the 10th rank. So this is a great chain of being. According to a Coptic tradition, the clay of which Adam was made was brought by the angel Muriel from the land of the east. When God had made his body, he left it lying for 40 days and 40 nights without putting breath into it. These are the legends. At the request of our Lord, who promised to become Adam's advocate and to go down into the world, God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life in 3 times, saying, firstly, Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, and second and thirdly, according to the type of my divinity. Thereupon Adam rose up and worshipped the Father, saying, My Lord and my God. Okay, there's a mystery here, and it's according to a Coptic tradition. So this has been added into it, and there's a mystery in there, and I won't say it's not without controversy what's said there, and so I just leave it as it is. There's a lot in there that has not been spoken of anywhere else. The revolt of Satan and the battle in heaven. When the prince of the lower orders of angels saw what great majesty had been given unto Adam, so Adam was a new creation and the angels were old creations, he was jealous of him from that day, and he did not wish to worship him. And he said unto his hosts, Ye shall not worship him, and ye shall not praise him with the angels. It is meet that ye should worship me, because I am fire and spirit, and not that I should worship a thing of dust, which hath been fashioned of fine dust. And the rebel, meditating these things, would not render obedience to God, and of his own free will he asserted his independence, and separated himself from God. But he was swept away out of heaven, and fell, and the fall of himself and of all his company from heaven took place on the 6th day, at the 2nd hour of the day. And the apparel of their glorious state was stripped off them, so they lost their bright nature. And his name was called Satan, because he turned aside from the right way, and shade, because he was cast out, and devil, because he lost the apparel of his glory. He became ugly. And behold, from that time until the present day, he and all his hosts have been stripped of their apparel, and they go naked, and have horrible faces. The witches and the warlords. And when Satan was cast out from heaven, Adam was raised up, so that he might ascend to paradise in a chariot of fire. For out of each comes its opposite, and goes in the other direction. And the angels went before Adam singing praises, and the seraphim ascribed holiness unto him, and the cherubim ascribed blessing. And amid cries of joy and praises, Adam went into paradise. And as soon as Adam entered paradise, he was commanded not to eat of a certain tree. His entrance into heaven took place at the 3rd hour of the eve of the Sabbath, i.e. on Friday morning. Now, before we read the book, I just wanted to talk about the fruit of the tree of the knowledge about good and evil, because this is the most widely misunderstood phrase in all history. And I just think that nobody got this. And to me it's quite plain what it means. And that is that everything is perfect in the Garden of Eden, everything is perfect and happening automatically. All of the angels are controlling, and the divine order is controlling the actions of everything, controlling the animals, controlling everything. And it's only man who has been given free will to learn, really. And if man didn't have free will, he was just pushed around like an automaton, he wouldn't grow. Wisdom wouldn't grow. It's interesting. And so what God has created is an order, a law, which allows everything to be maintained in complete justice. So the word justice is very interesting. Just is that means that there's just is justice in the world. You don't need to make justice, it exists. And what you can do is you can stop justice happening by saying, no, don't do that, or I don't like that, or, and so, and you see it's a dog barking there. When we say, I don't like that, or don't do that, or no, or something like that, what's happening is we are saying that something's good or something's evil. And it's not all good. And it's all perfect, because sometimes we need to do what seems to be bad things. If a child is misbehaving and destroying part of the garden, it's necessary to correct the child and say, don't do that, that's not right. Okay. Now, as long as the father correcting the son, if you like, gets it right, and it is actually not right to do that, everything is in order, because then evil, which is doing the wrong thing, let's say it's killing a bee or something like that, which is obviously wrong, it's necessary to correct that. But if the child says to the father, "Don't correct me, it's right to kill bees." Now of course the child made a mistake, and it's necessary for them to correct that. And so naturally, if everything is operating in nature perfectly in the Garden of Eden, the father will correct the son, the child, and the balance will be restored. Eventually the child will learn not to do these things that are destructive, and everything will proceed properly. And so to eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is really what man has to do before he can be given eternal life, if you like, because he needs to learn all that stuff. So it's a mystery within a mystery, really. Yet it's all to do with the fact that everything is perfect, happening automatically. And if we simply do the will of God, which the will of God is what we would like to do, what we feel like doing every moment. So if we feel like going outside, getting our car and driving it without a license, for example, if we feel like doing that, we should do it, even though we don't have a license. If the law says you're not allowed to do that, but you have to do it, you feel like doing it, you shouldn't stop because some law says stop. You understand? It's kind of man's law, not God's law. There's a higher law, that's all I'm saying. There's a higher law to God's law. And there's a higher law to man's law, not God's law. There's no higher law than God's law. God's law is the law. And all the planets obey it, gravity obeys it, everything obeys it. And so when we obey the law put inside us by God, then, and the will of God, which is, then we end up doing the will of God. And the will of God is absolute. If we do something wrong, we'll have to do something that we don't like doing. We won't be able to help ourselves. We'll just feel like doing something that we don't like doing. Now, it's quite complicated, and so it's necessary to meditate on that for a bit. But I'm going to read the book to you now, because that's, understanding the not to eat from the fruit of the tree of good and evil. If you eat from it, you've got to get it right. You've got to learn all the lessons of it. You're going to fall, because you're going to make mistakes, and you learn by the mistakes. And God and nature is the same thing. Brings you back into oneness when you've learned all your lessons. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. This is one of the most important pictures ever painted. This is Michelangelo, The Fall of Adam and Eve, and it's painted on the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and it shows the transformation of the bodies of Adam and Eve by the act of disobedience or sinful behavior to actually change their bodies from a beautiful state on the left to the terrible, ugly state on the right. And so you can see how the artist has rendered the transformation. It's probably not really normally seen that. And so it's important to understand that the artist had a full understanding of the fall of Adam and Eve. The artist that painted this. Of course, Michelangelo was a genius, and it's likely that all geniuses understand the fall. Okay, now what we're going to read about is, we're going to read the next book we're going to look at is the book of Adam and Eve, and certain chapters of that which discuss this fall, and you'll see the detail of that. But if you come back to this picture afterwards, you'll understand this picture a lot better. Satan's attack on Adam and Eve. And when Satan saw that Adam and Eve were happy and joyful in paradise, that rebel was smitten sorely with jealousy at the beauty of Eve and desired her for himself. Remember, Satan is just a fallen angel, so it's just somebody who was an angel, lost the wisdom, fell. They're on the planet just walking around the earth. You know, Satan is walking around the earth. And he discovered Eve alone, for Adam was away too long, and Eve listened to the lies and corrupting words of Satan, because the fallen, corrupt angels walking around the earth are just full of lies. They just talk lies. You can see them all in the media. Anyway, that's another story. Okay, yes, and the rest is history. History is what happened after the fall, and you know, there's always been corruption in the world since then, and the idea is that it has to be corrected by Adam, the sons of Adam, who have their job to do. All the people who have been resurrected into the life into the higher heaven after losing their good light, if you like, and anyway, it will tell us here in the book. Let's have a look. Okay, from the first book of Adam and Eve. There's not the whole book, but there's some of it here. The crystal sea, God commands Adam, expelled from Eden, to live in the cave of treasures. On the third day, God planted the garden in the east of the earth, and on the border of the world eastward, beyond which, towards the rising sun, one finds nothing but water that encompasses the whole world and reaches to the borders of heaven. And to the north of the garden there is a sea of water, clear and pure to the taste, unlike anything else, so that through clearness thereof one may look into the depths of the earth. A nice pool of water. And when man washes himself in it, that's he baptizes and just to wash himself baptize himself in the pool, he becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark. Okay, it's not talking about white. White and wise are the same word in the ancient languages. Weisheit, Weisheit, whiteness. Weisheit in Germany is wisdom. And God created that sea of his own good pleasure, for he knew what would come of man he would make, so that after he had left the garden, on account of his transgression, men would be born in the earth. Born in the earth, that's a bit of a... He's not born in the earth. He's not like being born again. He falls to the earth from his state of grace, his love in God. Among them are righteous ones who will die, whose souls God would raise at the last day, when all of them will return to their flesh, bathe in the water of the sea, and repent of their sins. This is nonsense, this last day. This last day is the last day. Is not. There's a last day in every man's life. That last day is when he suddenly sees reality as being born again, if you like. And it's not a birth into the world, it's a birth out of the world into heaven again, birth back into heaven. And this is the second birth. And in this birth he becomes a son of man, because man has actually birthed something in this case, not woman. Yet when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northwards. This was so that he and Eve would not be able to go near to the sea of water where they could wash themselves in it, be cleansed from their sins, erase their transgressions they had committed, and be no longer reminded of it in the thought of their punishment. As to the southern side of the garden, God did not want Adam to live there either, because when the wind blew from the north, it would bring him on that southern side the delicious smell of the trees of the garden. Wherefore God did not put Adam there. This was so that he would not be able to smell the sweet smell of those trees, forget his transgression, and find consolation for what he had done by taking delight in the smell of the trees, and yet not be cleansed from his transgression. What we're saying here is that after the fall, after man's fall from grace, he doesn't live in the same actual physical place anymore. He can be shifted, he can be moved to other towns and cities, he can move house, he can lose everything that he has, and it can be replaced with something inferior. He could have been drinking beautiful divine water and then find himself drinking alcohol or shooting up with drugs. You know, after the fall, anything can happen to man depending on how far he wants to fall. Okay, we carry on. Again, also, because God is merciful and of great pity and governs all things in a way that he alone knows, he made our father Adam live in the western border of the garden, because on that side the earth is very broad. And God commanded him to live there in a cave in a rock, the cave of treasures below the garden. So it was a rocky place. It wasn't a comfortable place. It wasn't soft. He didn't have the same nice covering, live under a tree, live in communion with the animals. He had to live in a cave in the rock, in a house, yeah. Okay, carry on. Chapter 2. Adam and Eve faint when they leave the garden. God sends his word to encourage them. It's interesting. We'll go into this word a little bit in a minute. But when our father Adam and Eve went out of the garden, they walked the ground on their feet, not knowing they were walking. And when they came to the opening of the gate of the garden, and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with stones large and small, and with sand and weeds and briars, they feared and trembled, and fell on their faces from the fear that came over them, and they were as dead. So in the garden, they could walk on with bare feet. Everything was in order, it was natural. But when they left the garden, there were stones and briars and bad stuff. No, things got painful. Yeah. This is not talking about power, this is reality. Yeah? there is a place of fallen and demonic nature where this is the state of it, and most places in the world are in this state. There's very few places now where you can just walk barefoot and everything's beautiful. The dog is barking. God doesn't like it, the fact that the planet is not a garden of Eden anymore. It should be a garden. Because whereas until this time they'd been in the garden land, beautifully planted with all manner of trees, they now saw themselves in a strange and desolate land, far from the hand of God, which they knew not and had never seen. Okay, so the hand of God they knew not, they hadn't seen. God has taken the knowledge even of what it was like to be in the garden, taken it away from them. And because when they were in the garden they were filled with the grace of a bright nature, and they had not hearts turned away towards earthly things. So in their bright nature their minds were turned to heavenly things, to nice things, and now their hearts are turned towards earthly things, scratching for a living, that kind of thing. Therefore God had pity on them, and when he saw them fallen before the gate of the garden, he sent his word to our father, Adam and Eve, and raised them from their fallen state, that he might communicate with them on their fate. Now this is important. God can't communicate with people in a fallen state, doesn't communicate with people in a fallen state. That's what to be excommunicated from God is, to be put into this fallen state, to lose our bright nature. And he had to raise them from their fallen state just to talk to them. Okay, because now he wanted to tell them something, because he knew if he left them like that, that'd be the end of it. They'd never even know what happened to them. Concerning the promise of the great 5.5 days. 5.5 days. Remember that days are thousands of years in the Bible. That's 5,500 years. God said to Adam, I've ordained on this earth days and years, and you and your descendants shall never walk in them until the days and years are fulfilled, when I shall send the word that created you, and against which you have transgressed, the word that made you come out of the garden, and that raised you when you were fallen. Yes, the word that will again save you when the 5.5 days are fulfilled. So 5.5 days, 5,500 years, they have to walk in darkness, and then the word is sent. Now the word he's talking about is the word that is delivered through the angels. If you read the first book, that was what you've already been exposed to, you'll see that it's the angels actually who represent God, and the word that they speak to us, to Adam and Eve, is the word of God. It's coming from God through them. It doesn't seem like angels are speaking, it seems like God is speaking. That's how it appears, because they represent God. But when Adam heard these words from God and of the great 5.5 days, he did not understand the meaning of them. For Adam was thinking there would only be 5.5 days for him until the end of the world. And Adam cried and prayed to God to explain it to him. Then God, in his mercy for Adam, who was made after his own image and likeness, explained to him that these were 5,500 years, and how a great master would then come and save him and his descendants. In the same way that God made Adam a priest and a prophet, so God can make another Adam, priest and prophet, and send that Adam to save the sons of Adam, sons and daughters of Adam, who were lost still in the world, with a new teaching. And it says that this is 500 years. It's interesting, between these two events. Because when our father Adam came out of the garden, he passed by that tree and saw how God had changed the appearance of it into another form, and how it shriveled and bore only thorns and briars. And as Adam went to it, he feared, trembled and fell down, but God in his mercy lifted him up, and then made this covenant with him. And again, when Adam was by the gate of the garden, he saw the cherub with a sword of flashing fire in his hand. And the cherub grew angry and frowned at him. Both Adam and Eve became afraid of the cherub and thought he meant to put them to death. So they fell on their faces, trembled with fear. But he had pity on them and showed them mercy, and turning from them went up to heaven and prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, you sent me to watch at the gate of the garden with a sword of fire. But when your servants Adam and Eve saw me, they fell on their faces and were as dead. O my Lord, what shall we do to your servants? Then God had pity on them and showed them mercy and sent his angel to keep the garden. And the word of the God came to Adam and Eve and raised them up. And the Lord said to Adam, I told you that at the end of the 5.5 days I will send my word and save you. Strengthen your heart, therefore, and stay in the cave of treasures, of which I have before spoken to you. Okay, so God sent the word of the Lord to tell them this, through this cherub, I suppose. And when Adam heard this word from God, he was comforted with that which God had told him, for he had told him how he would save him. Okay, so Adam and the children of Adam are waiting to be saved by the teacher of righteousness who comes every now and again. Adam and Eve cried for having come out of the garden, their first home. And indeed, when Adam looked at his flesh, it was altered and aged. He cried bitterly, he and Eve, over what they had done, and they walked and went gently down into the cave of treasures. See, his flesh is made altered. There's a transformation involved. In an instant, one can transform from a beautiful looking angel into a horrible looking devil, as the fall takes upon one. And this can be photographed, it can be proved scientifically that this actually happens. And Michelangelo illustrated this phenomenon in his Sistine Chapel painting. And as they came to the cave of treasures, Adam cried over himself and said to Eve, "Look at this cave that is to be our prison in this world and a place of punishment. What is it compared with the garden? What is its narrowness compared with the space of the other? What is this rock compared to those groves?" Sacred groves here. "What is the gloom of this cavern compared with the light of the garden? What is this overhanging ledge of rock to shelter us compared with the mercy of the Lord that overshadowed us? What is the soil of this cave compared with the moss and the grasses of the garden land? This earth strewed with stones and weeds, and that planted with delicious fruit trees." And also concrete and cement is just as bad as all this stuff. Yeah? We make it. We make hell on earth. And Adam said to Eve, "Look at your eyes and at mine, which before held angels, praising in heaven, and they too without ceasing. But now we do not see as we did. Our eyes have become dim and look within." So our eyes are looking inside ourselves and not looking out anymore. Seems like they're seeing outside, but they really focus inside where the error is. And that planted with delicious fruit trees compared to that. And Adam said to Eve, "Look at your eyes and at mine, which before beheld angels praising in heaven, and they too without ceasing. But now we do not see as we did. Our eyes have become dim and look within. They cannot see outside like they used to see before." Adam said again to Eve, "What is our body today compared to what it was in former days when we lived in the garden?" Their bodies are different. After this, Adam did not want to enter the cave under the overhanging rock, nor would he ever want to enter it. But he bowed to God's orders and said to himself, "Unless I enter the cave, I shall again be a transgressor." He has to go in there. He wants to go in there. That's all, the only place he can go. Eve makes a noble and emotional intercession, taking the blame on herself. Then Adam and Eve entered the cave and stood praying in their own tongue, the original language before the world was made. And as they prayed, Adam raised his eyes and saw the rock and the roof of the cave that covered him overhead. This prevented him from seeing either heaven or God's creatures. So he cried and beat his chest hard until he dropped and was as dead. And Eve sat crying, for she believed he was dead. Then she got up, spread her hands towards God, appealing to him for mercy and pity, and said, "O God, forgive me my sin, the sin which I committed, and don't remember it against me. For I alone caused your servant to fall from the garden into this condemned land, from light into this darkness, and from the house of joy into this prison. O God, look at your servant fall in this manner, and bring him back to life, that he may cry and repent of his transgression which he committed through me. Don't take away his soul right now, but let him live, that he may stand after the measure of his repentance, and do your will as before his death." So do the will of God before death. He didn't do the will of God, and so he died. Died from the heaven into the world. Two different levels of water. But if you do not bring him back to life, then, O God, take away my own soul, that I be like him in darkness and despair, and leave me not in this dungeon, one and alone, for I could not stand alone in this world, but with him only. For you, O God, caused him to fall asleep, and took a bone from his side, and restored the flesh in the place of it by your divine power. And you took me, the bone, and made me a lady, bright like him, with heart, reason, and speech, and in flesh, like to his own. And you made me after the likeness of his looks by your mercy and power. Couples look the same. It's interesting. Their faces change. They become alike. O Lord, I and he are one, and you, O God, are our creator. You are he who made us both in one day. Therefore, O God, give him life, that he may be with me in this strange land. while we live in it on account of our transgression. But if you will not give him life, then take me, even me, like him, that we both may die in the same day. And Eve cried bitterly and fell on her father Adam from her great sorrow. Okay, now God's reprimand from Adam and Eve, in which he points out how and why they sinned, what the problem is, why are they in this state. Yet God looked at them, for they had killed the spirit within themselves through disobedience to his law. And it was not Eve's responsibility, but Adam's, that Adam left Eve alone and unattended, whilst dangers were present in the garden. And Eve only did what she must do, that Adam see the error of his ways. It's very important. And not to blame Eve for any mistake that is really the fault of Adam. And he reminded them of Satan, who did not keep his faith and had no good intent towards God, and that always Satan would be a challenge to Adam, that all righteousness must be proven by goodly and just deeds, and that both Satan and Eve were the responsibility of Adam, the teacher of righteousness, and his fallen state was just a reparation for his sins as a wrong teacher of humanity, that his own example be without just cause for complaint by his students. A bit of a mouthful that, but that really puts it there. And God said, Satan taught you what is right is wrong, and what is wrong is right. So you ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, believing his words. Thus have you transgressed my commandment, that you correct all evil, and therefore I have brought on to you all these sorrows. For I am God the Creator, who, when I created my creatures, did not intend to destroy them, but after they had sorely roused my anger, I punished them with grievous plagues until they repent. When they said repent, I wonder what they meant. Who said that, I wonder? There's a song. But if on the contrary they still continue hardened in their transgression, they shall be under a curse forever. Okay, so you can transgress to a point where that's the end of it. You're not going to ever be raised up out of the dark. So that's a warning, really. Forever may seem a long time. Okay, the beasts are appeased, chapter 7. When Adam and Eve heard these words from God, they cried and sobbed yet more, but they strengthened their hearts in God, because they now felt that the Lord was to them like a father and a mother, and for this very reason they cried before him and sought mercy from him. Then God had pity on them and said, O Adam, I have made my covenant with you, and I will not turn from it, neither will I let you return to the garden until my covenant of the great 5.5 days is fulfilled. And then Adam said to God, O Lord, you created us and made us fit to be in the garden. And before I transgressed, you made all the beasts come to me that I should name them. Your grace was then on me, and I named every one according to your mind, and you made them all subject to me. But now, O Lord God, that I have transgressed your commandment, all beasts will rise against me and will devour me and Eve your handmaid, and will cut off our life from the face of the earth. I therefore beg you, O God, that since you have made us come out of the garden and have made us be in a strange land, you will not let the beasts hurt us. When the Lord heard these words from Adam, he had pity on him and felt that he was truly said that the beasts of the field would rise and devour him and Eve, because he, the Lord, was angry with the two of them on account of their transgressions. Then God commanded the beasts and the birds and all that moves on the earth to come to Adam and to be familiar with him, and not to trouble him and Eve whilst they were good, nor yet any of the good and righteous among their offspring. So the animals won't harm good people, even if they're in a fallen state. Then all beasts paid homage to Adam according to the commandment of God. Yet there was one who was lower than all beasts, the serpent Satan, the devil against whom God was angry. That creature did not come to Adam together with the beasts. He was to be more trouble to Adam and the rest of God's creatures than all the beasts together. Okay, the serpent and Satan, the symbology of it, I think it's just a symbol really. Yeah, Satan, the real Satan, is a man that walks the earth who fell a very great depth into the world. His will, he doesn't follow the will, he makes powerful his will. I will do this. That's what Satan does. Okay, let's carry on. Chapter 8. The bright nature of man is taken away. This bright nature, it's a good word. It's only in this book that this use of this term bright nature is found. Then Adam cried and said, "O God, when we lived in the garden and our hearts were lifted up, we saw the angels that sang praise in heaven. But now we can't see like we used to. No, when we entered the cave, all creation became hidden from us." Then God the Lord said to Adam, "When you were under subjection to me, you had a bright nature within you, and for that reason could you see things far away. But after your transgression, your bright nature was withdrawn from you, and it was not left to you to see things far away, but only near at hand, that you might correct the error of your own ways, not those of the righteous, nor yet even sinners, until the beam within your own eyes is removed." When Adam and Eve heard these words from God, they went their way, praising and worshipping him with a sorrowful heart. And God ceased to commune with them. It's good they're listening to the teachings of God. They're repenting of their sins, but they're still in the darkness. The fall of Adam, why darkness and light were created. That's interesting. Then when God, who is merciful and full of pity, heard Adam's voice, he said to him, "O Adam, so long as the good angel was obedient to me, a bright light rested on him and on his hosts. But when he transgressed my commandments, I deprived him of that bright nature, and he became dark. And when he was in the heavens, in the realms of light, he knew nothing of darkness. But he transgressed, and I made him fall from the heaven onto the earth, and it was this darkness that came over him." Now, it's not an imaginary heaven this is talking about. It's simply the heaven that we're in. We're all walking around in heaven, if we're in heaven. Or we're all walking around in hell or in the world, if we're in hell or the world. And it's the same place, but it isn't, because there's nobody in this room in hell. I'm alone here in heaven. And if somebody walks through the door and sits together with me here, they'll be in heaven too. Nobody who's in hell is going to come in here. But if I go out there, mess around out there, there's many thousands and thousands, untold millions of people walking around in hell, and I'll be forced to mix with them. So we have to be in heaven. Heaven is a state of mind and a place. It's both. But heaven isn't some imaginary place, it's real. "And on you, O Adam, while in my garden obedient to me, did that bright light rest also. But when I heard of your transgression, I deprived you of that bright light. Yet of my mercy I did not turn you into darkness, but I made you your body of flesh, over which I spread the skin, in order that it may bear cold and heat as reparation for your transgressions." Now, what we're saying here is, when you are in heaven, there is no cold. You don't feel pain and suffering and cold in the normal way that you do in hell. In hell, your coat isn't warm enough, your bed isn't warm enough, you don't have a lady. There's all sorts of things that happen to you in hell or in the world that don't happen to you in heaven. And you might be provided with nice warm clothing and you don't feel cold, that's all it is. And the means and the wherewithal of it is up to God to provide you with these things through his will. And if you don't have them, it's because God took them away from you and made you cold, miserable. "And on you, O Adam, while in my garden and obedient to me, did that bright light rest also. But But when I heard of your transgression, I deprived you of that bright light. Yet of my mercy I did not turn you into darkness, but I made you your body of flesh, over which I spread the skin in order that it may bear cold and heat as reparation for your transgressions. Now, it's a bit of a kind of a parable simile here, and whilst the skin, it's the body, we suffer through the body, and it can be confused, as you might think that you were put into this world and you always suffer in this world, in this body. If you read this literally, it doesn't mean to be taken literally. It's just that the body is the source of the suffering, and if you are in the kingdom of heaven with the luminaries, then you don't feel any suffering. You only feel suffering when you are in a fallen state. If I had let my wrath fall heavily on you, I should have destroyed you, and had I turned you into darkness, it would have been as if I had killed you. But in my mercy I have made you as you are. When you transgressed my commandment, O Adam, I drove you from the garden, and made you come forth into this land, and commanded you to live in this cave, and darkness covered you, as it did over him who transgressed my commandment. Thus, O Adam, has this night deceived you? It is not to last forever, but is only of 12 hours, half a day. When it is over, daylight will return. So what it's saying here is it's just like day and night. It comes and it goes. Our enlightenment, the light within us shines, God puts his light and love in us, or takes it away, and it's only for a time. When it is over, daylight will return, the light will return. Sigh not therefore, neither be moved, and say not in your heart that this darkness is long and drags on wearily, although it will seem so. And say not in your heart that I plague you with it. Strengthen your heart and be not afraid. This darkness is not a punishment. But, O Adam, I have made this day, and have placed the sun in it to give light, in order that you and your children should do your work. Now, I just want to talk about time and eternity here, because in the kingdom of heaven there is a feeling of eternity, so it's not noticeable that time is passing, and cannot be bored in the kingdom of heaven. Yet in the kingdom of the world and fallen nature, there's a recognition of time, that time is actually moving, or standing still is the normal perceived thing. You become aware of time, and this is part of the internal, you've been directed to yourself now, and so you become aware of time. So you're either in time or you're in eternity. As soon as the light is given back, then your bright nature returns you into eternity. Let's carry on. Then concerning the tree I commanded you not to eat of it, yet I knew that Satan, who deceived himself, would also deceive you. So it's Satan who's deceiving. It's a tree of good and evil. It's to do with Satan. So I made known to you by means of the tree not to come near him, and I told you not to eat of the fruit thereof, nor to taste of it, nor yet to sit under it, nor to yield to it. What Satan does, he says, this is good and this is evil, and you need to, and it's all wrong, it's all the wrong way around, it's all, there's an expression, I won't use it. And so to not listen to Satan and simply try to steer away from Satan, not be part of what Satan's up to, otherwise you get involved in everything to do with Satan. Had I not been and spoken to you, Adam, concerning a tree, and had I left you without a commandment, and you had sinned, it would have been an offence on my part for not having given you any order. You would turn around and blame me for it. So what God has done, God is man, man is the prophets of God that God has sent. God has himself incarnated into the prophets to come and teach man, and he's left all these books, and these books are there to study the wisdom of God. And anybody who takes up this study will then be brought out into the light. His 5,500 years, if you like, will be over. Because we have to bear in mind there's old souls and there's young souls. So all the time this 5,500 years is coming up. It's like a birthday, you know, and everybody's birthday, all the time people have been born into the light because they've served their 5,500 years of darkness for the original transgression that brought them into this world. And so each one of them has to do his job and become part of a new angel that God makes in every end time. And we're in an end time now, believe you me, and there are many people in the world who have come into the light, coming into the light, and form part of a new angel. If you read in the Bible, they talk about 144,000, those without a spot, the saintly ones, you know, when the saints go marching in, when the saints go marching in, the saints, these are the people going out this time. They've done their 5,500 years journey. Okay, they are the ancient ones. They're ancient souls. There are much younger souls. They still have a long way to go. Okay, for not having given you any oil, you would turn around and blame for me. So you cannot blame God, because God has provided the Gospels and the religious writings of the masters who came before. But I commanded you and warned you, and you fell, so that my creatures cannot blame me, but the blame rests on them alone. And, O Adam, I have made the day so that you and your descendants can work and toil in it. And I have made the night for them to rest in it from their work. And so, day and the night. And for the beasts of the field to go forth by night and look for their food. But little of darkness now remains, O Adam, and daylight will soon appear. For once you understand that everything is perfectly just and is happening according to my will, you will refrain from eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and eat of the tree of life and light, knowing that the only evil is that which you left uncorrected, to disorder the garden like any other unpulled weed. Very important, the summation of it all in that chapter. Okay, now chapter 14. This is the earliest I know of prophecy of the coming of the Messiah and how that works, about what the Messiah is and all that. I'll read it for you. Then Adam said to God, O Lord, take you my soul, and let me not see this gloom any more, or remove me to some place where there is no darkness. But God the Lord said to Adam, Indeed, I say to you, this darkness will pass from you. Every day I have determined for you until the fulfillment of my covenant, the 5,500 years, when I will save you and bring you back again into the garden. Again God said to Adam, all this misery that you have been made to take on yourself because of your transgression will not free you from the hand of Satan and will not save you. But I will, when I shall come down from heaven and shall become flesh of your descendants, and take on myself the infirmity from which you suffer, then the darkness that covered you in this cave shall cover me in the grave, when I am in the flesh of your descendants. He's saying that the grave of God is the flesh of man. It's quite profound, that. And I, who am without years, shall be subject to the reckoning of years. You see the eternity to time again. Of times, of months, and of days, and I shall be reckoned as one of the sons of men in order to save you. And God ceased to commune with Adam. Now, there's always somebody sent to save people in every age. It's not every 2,000 years, it's all the time. And so, for me, the person sent to save me was Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti was God incarnate. He was even prophesied that Krishnamurti was the Christ and all this kind of thing. And he even disbanded his own order. And so I read the works of Krishnamurti. I met Krishnamurti without even knowing I was meeting him or who he was. And so I had a personal experience with Krishnamurti. And he became my master, if you like, that taught me how to come into and stay in the light and not sin against God, not break the laws of nature, basically. He partially taught me, and then, I read many books of all the masters. I can't say that any of them, all of them taught me something. The Buddha, the Christ, you name it, the Avatar synthesis, they all taught me many things. And so you become old in years. It's been 20 years, 2001, that I was brought through this process and come to know what it actually means, and from personal experience. And all of you lot, if you got this far into the video, you must be part of this new movement. And what I'm giving to you here now is something, whatever I can do to help the children of the future find their way. The same as Krishnamurti did, the same as anybody did who went through this process. 144,000, they all had to do this. They all had to give their all and follow the will of God and find out where that led them and give their all for the future of the human race. So I hope that explains a little bit more of the journey from death into life. And it's more difficult for some people than it is for other people, depending on their karma, really, what they did in past lives, what they did in this life. It all adds up, and you cannot escape until all of us have paid the last farthing and learned all of the lessons that God has put in front of us. And I don't believe there comes a time ever that one ceases to learn lessons, that these lessons go on and on and on. And once you learn the lessons of the individual person, you have to learn the lessons of the couple, because the lessons of the couple are more complex and difficult. And then there's the lessons of the group, and lessons of the nation, and the lessons of the planet. And so there's a long journey, and who knows, I don't think it stops. It's not something that one could conceive of that would be any end to it, because having created this system of learning, this learning should go on for an eternity. Okay, I hope. And it's very nice. It's nice to learn new things. And it's what inspires people to carry on and live. And we cannot live without learning. And so, thank you for listening to this little story. And I enjoyed making it, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And I've got all the words that are on the video, so you can stop the video anytime you like and go over the words and read the book. It's the only way I could think of to actually get it out to people, because I've been sitting on it for some years now, and it's time it went out. And it's a special time. It's time that we go back now over the past. And I'm taking you to the very beginning, the most important stuff that's been laid before man. And you need to know what that is, what's been laid before man, so that you can know what you need to know to exit any of your mistakes and transgressions, get back onto the pathway, and start to walk the walk that will take you into the next 5,500 years. Okay, thanks for watching. Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Check ignition and put your headlights on. Control to Major Tom. Headlights on. Check ignition, and may God's love be with you.